My name is Morgan Spence. I am 17 years old and I'm a stop motion animator who works with Lego.
I'm Louise, co-founder of Dinobite Lab.
Vogelbinder design and build adventures to inspire change. With the smallest tweaks of the programme, teaching them about connection, purpose, vitality and focus, getting them to think about that stuff before they do the activity, just gives it a whole different meaning.
Good afternoon, STEAM Schoolers. Welcome to our final show of Global Entrepreneurship Week. We have saved possibly the best to last. We have a young female entrepreneur who works in an industry which I'm sure you will all know very well. It's the video game sector. So I'm so excited to welcome Louise to the show. Welcome to STEAM School.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, so we actually had Louise on the show last year when they just completed the Kickstarter project, and you're actually in the process, nearly finished, of developing your own video game. Is that right?
Yeah, so we have made other video games, for example, for schools. We do a lot of educational games that are trying to make learning a little bit more fun. But this is going to be our first self-published game, so it's going to be on iPhones and Android, and it's really, really exciting.
Yeah, it is, and what a great achievement. So I'm looking forward to learning more about the process and all about your journey as a video games entrepreneur. So let's get started. Okay, so how did you get into the video game sector? Because it's like everybody wants to work there. We all play video games. So I imagine it's quite tough to get started.
It definitely is a very competitive industry. I always loved video games. I've been playing games since I was probably 4 years old or something. And it never even occurred to me that this could be a job, that, you know, the video games I was playing, people actually made these. And there are huge teams of not just like one person, but like hundreds of people, all with their various different roles. And so as I got older and I was looking into what I wanted to study at university, I always knew that I wanted a kind of out of the ordinary type of job. I never felt like I could sit in an office and have like a very 9-to-5 type of job. So the games industry is very creative. You work project to project. And I just thought to myself, this is where I want to be. So I studied something called interactive media. That definitely gave me a big boost in terms of learning what's needed to make a video game. And yeah, it, like I say, is very competitive. So I decided, and I tell this to all people who want to work in the video games industry, the best thing that you can really do is just go out there and start making games. Even if you're not working for someone, come up with a game idea yourself. You can go down the more professional route of actually, like I did, creating a limited company so that you can, you know, distribute your games properly, but just start making games. That's the best way to get into the industry.
So there are lots of different routes out there, as you've talked about, and possible careers in the video game sector. You could have very easily gone to work for one of the big video games companies, or been a freelancer and taken on commissioned projects like I know you do already. Mm-hmm. But why did you decide to create your own video game? Because it's a massive undertaking, isn't it?
It really is. Much more than I even anticipated when I originally had the idea. But I think one of the reasons that it's so important for us, myself and my co-founder, to make the games that we're creating is because we are very passionate about what makes a good game. We believe in storytelling as being a huge part of games. I have a background in user experience design, which is like quite technical, but it essentially boils down to just making a game or app as easy to use as possible to give you the best experience. And we also are really passionate about, you know, our cast of characters and wanting to put whoever we want in our games, irregardless of gender, ethnicity, etc. And there are definitely some companies out there that you can end up working for who will have their own ideas about who they want in their games. And we really wanted to not have to compromise at all on the stories we wanted to tell and have complete freedom to make what we want. And really, in some ways, the only way to do that is to not have, you know, a big publisher over you telling you, okay, but it has to include X, Y, Z. When we make our games, we can just literally, we start from scratch and we say, what's the idea? Who are the characters? What's the world? And we just make it.
So tell us a little bit more about that process then. So to create your game, you used a platform called Kickstarter, where you can use your community to crowd fund and crowdsource your game. Tell us a little bit more about why you decided to do that and what that process was like.
So one of the reasons that we chose Kickstarter is because, first of all, it's really good in terms of marketing. Even if your game doesn't get funded, being put on Kickstarter means that a lot of people are looking at it. And like I say, we obviously were very lucky to get funded, but even if we hadn't, we would have already built a small audience who were interested in our game and could have tried to get some investment further. The reason that Kickstarter was right for us was because the people who we're accountable to are players. And we are a company that is always designing for our players anyways. We want to give them the best experience. We're always, we have a program called Dino Bits where we send out surveys and let them test out our games as they're in development to get feedback. And we really want our players to be a part of that process. Some alternate routes instead of Kickstarter are, for example, getting investors. And that can kind of create that thing I was just mentioning where suddenly your investors might start saying, oh, but I don't like this character, or can't you make this character like this instead? Or could it be a boy instead of a girl? Or like, they might want to start changing things. And we really didn't want to compromise on that. So that's why Kickstarter was really, really good for us. We felt like we could still have full control of the project and have like a good audience for it who was excited to play the games.
Fantastic. And in terms of actually making the game, how long does that process take?
That really depends on the game. We have had some projects which took a month. Sometimes we'll do games jams, which are really tiny games. They might only take 5 minutes to complete. And we do that as kind of like an exercise to make us better game designers. Those can take everywhere from like 1 to 2 weeks to make. Some people can even make them across like a weekend in a very intensive sort of, you stay up for 48 hours just making a game. And then like larger games, recently Fallout 76 came out, and that has been in development for 3 years. Meadly, which is the game that we're making that we had on Kickstarter, that's been in development for about 1 year now and is looking to get finished. So it takes as long as you want it to take. It really depends on how big a project you're making. But I'd say that if you're just starting out making games, the best advice I can give you is to try to limit yourself and be a bit realistic, because you might think that a very simple game like Candy Crush, for example, that you could make that super fast. But that game probably had at least a year or longer development, depending on a lot of the different, layers to the design of the game. So try to start small and then rather build on it, because you can always add to something. But if you start having to like take away, it becomes really hard because you get attached to your ideas and you just want to go with them. And then you might not ever finish a project.
So let's talk about skills, because I think lots of young people would find it surprising to know how many different types of roles and skill sets are involved in making a game.
So if you're looking at larger games companies, they will have hundreds of people, all with different roles. And that's kind of one of the cool things about the games industry is people don't realize that there is a place for you no matter what you're good at. If you're not a very creative person, you could still get a role in something like human resources or accounting. Not to say that those aren't creative things in their own way, but if you're not great at drawing, you could, for example, become a programmer that requires more logical thinking. There's so many roles, and it would probably take me half an hour or more to just like list all of the little roles that we have within that. When you are doing what we do, which is working in a very, very tiny team, you kind of have to become a little bit good at everything. So my co-founder, Christian, he takes care of most of the coding aspects of it, especially the back-end stuff. I can do some front-end coding, but I personally don't enjoy it so much, so that's why I don't do it. He does the visual effects, and then I take care of things like creating the assets and drawing, concept art, a lot of the design elements like making buttons and menus. It's some of those like small things that I think people don't realize is a huge part of creating a game, is just thinking about, okay, where am I going to place this next level button? That actually takes a lot of consideration. Sound design. I think that if you're good at anything, even if it's one small thing, there's going to be somewhere for you in the games industry.
I love that about the games sector. I love that you can be an artist, or if you're really into kind of psychology and gamification.
Yeah.
There's so many different roles. I once met somebody who had his own company, and he specialised in making clouds for big games. That was his whole life. That was his whole job.
Yeah. And it's amazing. And you can be anything. Like before getting into games, I was really keen on becoming an actress. That was sort of my passion throughout high school. And I could have, for example, transitioned into becoming a voice actress for games. That's something that people don't really think about a lot. We also do a lot of things like motion capture and animation. We need actors for that. So there's just such a variety of ways that you could work in making games.
Yeah, I totally love it. Everyone should give it a go. Okay, so you've had this process now. Your game's been in development for a year. What would you say is the most challenging part of that process of developing that game?
I think, especially with longer projects, and this is something that I feel like we don't talk enough about in the games industry, it can sometimes be hard to maintain your interest and motivation in a project. So finding ways to kind of refresh that passion that you have at the start of a project. Obviously, the start is the most fun because you're doing a lot of brainstorming. Like when we start a project, we have brainstorming sessions. We come up with ideas for characters. We'll make mood boards. So like literally going on Pinterest, for example, and picking out color palettes for the game or things that inspire us. And then once you've been developing for 6 months and you're just kind of having hurdle after hurdle, it's difficult to maintain that super excitement for it and really still loving your game. Obviously, we still really love Meadly and we're excited to put it out there, but it definitely goes kind of up and down like a roller coaster.
Yeah,
I'd say that's the toughest thing to get through, which is why I do suggest going for shorter projects to begin with, because then you won't have those issues. If you're working on something for a month or two, you're probably going to maintain that excitement throughout the whole project.
Mm. And I guess once you've made the game and you've finished and it's all signed off, then you've got to, make sure that people actually buy it.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's a whole new different project. Mm. When you do launch it onto the market, what's your plan to make sure that you get as many users as possible?
So there's a lot of different ways to go forward with marketing. And the great thing about the age that we live in is that there's a lot of ways to market stuff for free if you don't have a big budget. Obviously, we have set aside a little bit of budget and you can buy ad space on Facebook or Instagram, things like that. But you can also try to do a lot of free marketing, and it's difficult, but you can try to make something go a little bit viral with like some cool clips or GIFs using the correct hashtags and just being really, really active on social media, whether that's personally my favorites are Twitter and Instagram for marketing. And that's kind of where we're planning. Also reaching out to press or bloggers. Twitch is a really big thing right now. I'm sure that a lot of you watching have your favorite Twitch streamers like Ninja or something. And a lot of companies will reach out to these streamers and say, hey, here's a free copy of my game if you're interested in playing, or even putting, obviously for larger streamers like Ninja, he's probably getting paid like quite a few thousand just to look at a game. And that's definitely the new form of marketing, is everything is online, everything is social. You don't really place an advertisement in a newspaper for a video game anymore.
It's all about the influencers, isn't it? And building that community.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've got two very similar questions for you. First of all, what do you think is the best aspect about working in the video game sector?
I think I'm a person who really loves to be creative. And so the opportunity to get to do that, but in so many different ways, is really great. I like that in games, you're always working on different projects. So with a lot of jobs, you might start your career and you kind of are gonna be doing a very similar thing for very many years. Whereas in games, you could be working on a very simple mobile game to begin with, and then you go on to make something like Call of Duty, which is completely different and has a completely different development process. And for me, that's my favorite thing. I like to have a large variety of things going on in my work life. It keeps me from getting bored. And then also there's the fact that when we are in that initial phase, we do a lot of what's called market research. So we're basically looking at what other games are doing so that we're not, for example, copying them, but also to kind of get inspiration and see what people like. And that is essentially a month where we just play a lot of video games. So that's super fun.
Absolutely. I mean, of course, who wouldn't want to play video games for a month in the name of research? How amazing is that? Yeah. So, okay. So what about being an entrepreneur? We've talked about the challenges. You've got to find the funding. You've got to pay for yourself. And of course, you get to make these amazing choices about how you spend your time. But what for you is your favourite part of being an entrepreneur?
For me, I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs. I watched my mom start businesses and really succeed. And so I always knew that would be a possibility for me, that I didn't have to follow the sort of traditional work path, which is, you go to school, you get your first job, you get promoted, etc. It's just so completely different being an entrepreneur. You kind of hit the ground running. And I love, not to sound like a nerd, but I really love learning. And that is a very large part of being an entrepreneur. You have to teach yourself so much about how to run a business, but also, there are legal responsibilities to running a company, like doing accounting and making sure that you're profitable and things like that, which varies in degrees depending on your industry. But I love that sort of thing. I always like to be able to challenge myself. And then at the end of the day, even if you're working really hard, there's such a huge difference to working hard for yourself and knowing that everything you achieve is for your own company and your own projects and your own profits, as opposed to doing that for someone else, which there isn't anything wrong with. But I know that for me, I get more motivated thinking I'm going to get something amazing out of this, as opposed to just feeling like I'm part of a group that's kind of doing something, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And I love that you come from a family of entrepreneurs, and obviously that started you on a path to your own journey. And, researchers say that this generation, Gen Z, so all those children who are now of school age, are possibly the most entrepreneurial generation to date. So, why do you think it's a really good idea for young people to get involved in entrepreneurial projects now whilst they're at school in preparation for their future?
I think, first of all, I'm so inspired by the next generation. It makes me so excited to think about sort of where my industry is going to be thanks to them, for example, and what great benefits they're going to bring. We recently were doing some workshops to teach kids how to be game designers, and it actually is so cool to see how excited they are about starting to do these things outside of, just doing what's required of them, like homework and stuff. They actually want to work towards building something. And I think that's really important. The earlier you start, to be honest, the better it's going to be for you, especially in a tough industry like games where there is so much competition. Obviously, like I say, it's a fun industry to work in. You get to play video games. So a lot of people are going to want to work with doing that.
Yeah.
And the better your portfolio is and the more experience you have, no matter what age you start at, the more of an edge you're going to have when you start applying for those jobs. And also, I think there's definitely something to be said about people will find it very interesting if you're a young person who has started your own business. That in itself becomes a really nice marketing edge for you because you can promote yourself as not just a young entrepreneur. I've been promoted as a young entrepreneur and I'm in my 20s. If you're under 18 and you've started your own business, that's incredible. Most people your age aren't going to be doing that. And that's going to give you a lot of interest from, for example, press, or I've seen a lot of super successful Kickstarters where a group of kids will get together to make a game. And people love that. They want to support you. They want to support your dreams. So there's no reason that you shouldn't use that to your advantage.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it doesn't matter that, you know, in 5-10 years time, it doesn't matter if you don't end up working in the video game sector, because all of those skills that you will develop and that creative process and problem solving, that can be applied in so many different industries. Yeah,
it teaches you so much. It's kind of like I was saying about having studied acting before. Obviously, I didn't become an actress, but I have taken all of those skills and used them here. I do a lot of public speaking. I don't know that I would have been as confident about that if I hadn't taken all of those acting classes. So it's just important to try to gain as many skills as you can throughout your life. You can kind of think about it like a game in the sense that you gain skills, you level up, and at the end of the day, you know, when you do grow up, you might be a higher level, so to speak, than some of your peers. And that's going to mean that you can get a better job.
Yeah, absolutely. That's just amazing advice. I love that. We all need to level up, get started. And one example of how you can all level up today, this week, is, you know, we have a weekly mini challenge, and this week is no different. And because it's Global Entrepreneurship Week, we want to hear all your ideas. We want you to pitch your idea for a business. You know, you can take inspiration from the 3 guests we've had today. You know, it might be using your creative skills. It might be a business with a social impact. But we want to hear your idea, who's it's for, what problem it's going to solve, and how you're going to make it a success. Louise, it's been an absolute delight to have you on the show once again.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been really fun.
Yeah, we need to make it like an annual thing. Definitely. And next year we can talk about how successful your game has been on the App Store. That would be absolutely amazing. I'm sure lots of the students will want to follow your journey. So where can they find you online?
We are called Dinobite Labs pretty much everywhere on Twitter. So that's Dino, like a dinosaur, and then Byte, like a gigabyte, so BYTE. And we also are, for those kids who are interested in learning more about game design, I suggest you visit our website, dinobitelabs.com, and sign up to our newsletter or have your parents do so, because we're going to be announcing something really cool to help young future games designers learn as much as they can and make some fun games.
Fantastic. And that's the second exclusive in 2 weeks, only for STEAM School viewers. So yeah, please do sign up to that newsletter if you are interested in video games. There are tons of resources out there if you want to learn more, but they're not all targeted to children. And Louise and her team have a really good project for you. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
It's been delightful to spend an afternoon with you. Take care.
Likewise.
Bye.